The following stream contains mature content and subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised. Just a minor problem. That's the problem with meeting with you in a bar, listening to jazz. Call it the Jazz Bar. Never have learned the name of this place. It's good to see you come visit me. I've decided it's time to get off the streets for a bit. It's not the safest place for me to be, so I figured I would live it up a bit, a little bit of the high life. Spend time in a bar, listen to jazz music, keep an eye on people. But I don't think that's what you've come to hear. I think you're here because you're curious. You want to know about all these interesting people that I have taken an interest in, you might say. Where to start? It's always the question with discussions like this. Where do you start? I guess the simplest way would be to discuss introducing everyone. When this all began, we had a Ventru named Jacqueline, though her friends call her Jackie. Her, well, I would say best friend, but that's hard to put into kindred terms, but I guess that's closest ones that fits. Her best friend, Eleanor the Malkavian. We had a former Sabbat Templar, Lamar, newly joined to the Camarilla. We have a Toreador, oddly enough raised by a Nosferatu, one Martin, of Clan Nosferatu, and a veteran of the Sabbat Wars by the name of Destiny. Her name is odd, Destiny Star Jones. Almost a stripper's name, I've been told. Then we had, if you'd believe it, a pair of Tremere. And yet this pair of Tremere were as opposite of each other as day and night. One, a former mage who lost his power, who was embraced and now seeks to regain it. The other was ex-House Goratrix, who found out his sire was a infernalist. And he turned him over to the Camarilla as his price of joining. Quite interesting. The story begins with him being given a steakhouse. Very odd thing to be given. And a domain in the city of Chicago. Now, domains are not really given out in Chicago, so it's quite odd that this had happened. But they were given one, located just south of the Wicker Park Rack, which makes him an extension of Wicker Park. And I'd love to say they were given a prime piece of real estate. The hunting is good. But the neighborhood was troubled. There's an undercurrent of violence, anger, hostility that this coterie felt when he walked on the street. And the funny part about this coterie was its purpose. You see, they were told what the purpose is. The purpose was to put a Toreador who had been raised by Clan Nosferatu in with a group of high clans, notably the Ventru and the Tremere, so they could be taught, well, how to be a Toreador. There was some question raised, of course, because how Toreador could you be if you were raised by a Nos? And then we had our wayward La Sombra that was also put in this coterie to ensure that they could fit in with the Camarilla. You might say this coterie was a group of babysitters with kindred that the Prince of the Chicago did not exactly feel he trusted enough. quite interesting because from the get-go there was some friction. Destiny being a Sabbat hunter, Lamar being ex-Sabbat. Jackie being the venture she is who protects those close to her. Almost being felt by Destiny as a mother. Was interesting, actually. Quite amusing, you might say. But in the end, I think you'll find they worked a lot of this out. You see, they noticed that there was all this aggression in their domain. They walked the streets rather quickly, discovering, of all things, a jazz bar. Rather familiar jazz bar to me. And it was there one Lamar Cade, former Sabbat Templar, had noticed, let's just say, signs of Sabbat activity, though they were in the past. This is also where I believe Jackie first got the idea to purchase a piece of real estate, a jazz bar in particular, at least to be a silent partner. They also met one Kathy with a K. Rather odd toreador who enjoys her jazz music but is attached to one Nero. And this Nero, I think we're going to cover a bit later on in our discussion because he's an interesting individual. But that's where they met this Kathy. Now, one of the reasons we had some problems with this particular coterie was the secrets. The secrets kept between them all. You see, we have Lamar, who has a very special Mola. That Mola was Tally. Now, Tally's a fun individual. I like Tally. He's quite interesting, actually. Quite a fun person to observe. But, you see, Lamar recognized one Roscoe Akers, the Tremere. Recognized him from a raid that had happened on a Tremere chantry. And while speaking with Tally, Tally also warned him that the neonate Portia is not who she says she is. That is actually Helen of Troy, Bane of Carthage, manipulator, and enemy of Menelaus. Quite bothersome little toreador. A rose that I would love to see clipped someday. Then we have other secrets. Jackie worried of her sire. We have Destiny as a protege of one Wineka. Bit of a snitch of a Nosferatu, though I guess calling a Nosferatu a snitch is kind of like calling the sun bright. Kind of a thing they do. We have Roscoe, who, through entirely legal means, managed to acquire a book of flesh that supposedly came from a Setite temple. We have the Tremere Jonathan, who's not trusted by most of the city, but is trusted by his regent, Abraham. We have Jackie, who meets with archons of the Camarilla. Of course, we have the Jackie and Destiny, who don't get along very well. Eleanor trying to be the mediator of the group, who hates it when Mommy and Mommy are fighting. She doesn't like to see Mommies fighting. And then, well, the Sabbat signs. That was a bit of a problem. You see, Jonathan, having the amount of money that he does, he had decided he wanted to open a new club. Now, his first idea was Club Confessional, which I happen, given my history, to find rather amusing. But there was something very odd about this particular club. You see, when they went in it, they found no animals, no insects, no bugs, none of the little critters that normally would live in it. They also found an opening to the Undercity and some old Sabbat signs that marked it as a haven, an emergency hideout. And I would like to say this was the strangest thing they found there, but it's not. They found the building to be warded, which explained the animals and the insects unable to cross. And then the oddest thing, they found a skeleton. Didn't seem to be held together by anything, but it was laid out in a burial pose on a bed. You know, it's odd as I go through this, I don't think they ever found out what happened with that skeleton or even what it was. I'm sure, nothing bad is going to ever come of that. Not at all. And then, you see, Lamar, knowing who Portia was, he warned the coterie, do not go to the Succubus Club alone. Do not be caught alone with a neonate such as Portia. Because, well, to be frank, you may not come out of it. But, kindred being what they are, of course, they went to the Succubus Club. You see, because Jackie actually had business she had to attend with her child, one Abigail, who spends a lot of time with this coterie in clubs for some reason. I'm not sure why. She always seems to meet this coterie in a club. But that seems to be what happens. They were also there to see Baby Chorus. Now, Baby Chorus is an interesting subject because I don't understand it, given the Tower's opinions on masquerades. Why would you allow a 15-year-old who's been one of us for decades to have a band, very public band, one who has albums, a record label, and performs, out of all things, the Succubus Club? But do not know what deals have been made with Prince Jackson. But that's fine. That's between them two. It was a very interesting night. That was the night the coterie met Alexa and Aluk, the Scourge, or as Hubris, she calls herself, the Canis Majoris, the big dog. Quite a chip on your shoulder to call yourself that one. They met a rather interesting, tasty morsel named Zhao. Now, I'm well beyond a physical attraction, but there's something about those who play with the dead and the spirits of those who have gone before us. It'd be quite interesting to taste her blood to see what secrets that contains. And then it was rather amusing because, though no one knows this from this coterie, but I was there that night in the Succubus Club. You see, I saw one Lamar Cade get a little bit of attention from Portia. Just the simplest of things, she caressed the side of his cheek with the back of a fingernail. And frankly, I've seen kindred who moved slower to get out of the sunlight than he did to get out of that club. So you might say that, actually, I didn't say that. I believe Eleanor said it was snakes in his pants. There's a piece of art that reflects that, actually. And it's here we get back to this Nero character. You see, this is where they finally met Mr. Nero. Now, Mr. Nero is an odd toreador. He is a toreador who has lost his muse. He is somewhat of a, well, to be frank, he's somewhat of a monster. You see, he has lost that link back to what makes us remember our days as a human. Though unexpectedly his beast isn't in control, he's devoid of emotion, devoid of compassion, devoid of any of the smaller niceties that would make you think he knows what being a human is. And he has this odd fascination with the violence in the city and the anger in the city, and he can feel it. You see, that strikes me funny because I thought only our clan could actually read the city that well. But I know Malkavian, he is not. So now, let's see. Where to go with the story from here? You see, because a bunch of things happened at this point. Things that I think need to be covered. We have Lamar meeting with Tally, where, if you believe it, Tally gave information, hints, really, that he was planning to start a war with Lupine. Because, well, what better way to drive the La Sombra into the heart of the Camarilla than to fight with them in a war? And by the time the war ends, the integration is complete. It's actually quite subtle. It's quite an interesting method to do it. It's not what I would use, but I can understand his reasoning. It's a little trick I believe he picked up from his own teacher. But the less we say of that monster, the better. We have the coterie investigating this particular Sabbat signs and an ambush which failed. It was really a setup, a test, you might say. But this did cause Jackie to go and speak with Tyrus about this Sabbat. You see, because Tyrus is an archon of the Camarilla, as is his entire gang. It's a presumption with archon, but this wolf pack, as they're called, one of their duties is dealing with the Camarilla. And, well, the Sabbat for the Camarilla. But you could say he's dealing with the Camarilla. Doesn't like it very much, it seems. I digress. The Sabbat member would fall into his purview, and, well, they failed to kill him, though they thought they did. So it seems Jackie arranged to have assistance in the form of Dread and Nitro, two members of the wolf pack, who would help them when the time came to deal with the Sabbat. This asshole, this thing. Which did not take long. They managed to lure him pretty easily, actually, into a building. Though he was ready for that trap, he was not ready for everything that came with it. For you see, Lamar went in to lure him, and Lamar learned a very important lesson. If you see a giant rat, run. Because that's no rat. But, needless to say, this Sabbat member did not fare well against a unified coterie. Nor did the woman he'd freshly embraced. That one who was embraced actually got dominated into attacking the one who sired her. And with the help of Dread and Nitro, this Sabbat member was finally met. His final death. And you know, personally, I don't play the sect game. I don't care, Camarilla, Anarch, Sabbat. It's games, it's foolish. It's all the same coin. A three-sided coin, you might say, though. How you make one of those, you would have to tell me. But in some cases, monsters like him, I agree they should be put down. Now we get to a rather interesting side story. And I say it's a side story because it's not a primary part of what went on. But you see, this coterie went to the art gallery. Art gallery run by one of Luke. Now, Luke is an interesting member of the ministry. He is blind. But that has not stopped him. Him and Alexa are lovers, though she is a monster of biblical proportions, with a chip on her shoulder, as I said before. Canis majoris, really. Assus majoris, maybe. But it was here we found that the Malkavian Scourge actually does art, which is quite interesting, actually. Though her art is rather disturbing in ways. And we also met the nosiest bitch in Chicago, Amelia Locke, reporter for the Chicago Tribune, and, well, former reporter. Now she does her own style thing. And Kindred, of all things. She reports on the high society events that the Kindred attend, though not mentioning the Kindred themselves. She always seems to do it in a way that preserves the Masquerade, but still, if you know what to look for, gives you an idea of what's going on. And now we come to a rather amusing part of the evening, you see, because there was a brouhaha in attendance that night, one Genghis. A fervent believer in the workers being trampled under, but at the same time, a man who's lived a life of luxury. Though he believes in his cause, you might see a little bit of hypocrisy in the way he lives. But he took an interest in destiny. Though the jury is still out. Is that interest really for destiny, or is that interest in tweaking Primogen Annabelle's nose? You see, because those two have a long-standing rivalry. And from his point of view, it'd be quite interesting to, shall we say, pluck a rose from her garden. Of course, I guess we're going to have trouble finding out on that one, won't we? Now we come to where things turn dark. This coterie has learned about the lake, what lives in the lake. And I know you sit here and go, well, it's a lake. Of course you do. Take it from someone who has lived centuries. What's in that lake has lived millennia upon millennia upon millennia. It is ancient beyond the ability to count time. Think on that just for a second while I take a sip of drink. And yes, I'm aware I will have to, if you know anything about my kind, I will have to get rid of this. But you see, sitting in a bar, listening to jazz music and talking like this, if I don't take a sip of drink every once in a while, let's just say that people will get suspicious. You must hide in plain sight. Now, this creature in the lake is quite interesting, you see, because legends have spoke of it for as long as there were legends. And it seemed to be linked to hostility under this coteries domain and a general hostility in the city itself. And to bring it up, though I hate being the one to out her particular secret, you see, the daughter of Malkav, Eleanor. Eleanor. They chose her, and I understand why. You see, she is a seer of amazing ability. And she had seen a vision of the thing in the lake. And she had seen a vision of the Sabbat member. So the coterie decided to investigate what this was. This is where the problem became. That by searching for it, sometimes information is very dangerous. You see, Jackie went one route. She went and met with the Anarchs. I believe it was Jackie and Eleanor and Roscoe and Jonathan that night. No. Yes, I believe that was that night. The days flash together sometimes. But they met down in Anarch territory, and they met with one Mal Davis. Now, Mal Davis, so much I could say about that particular individual. She's quite interesting. An Anarch, childer of a Tremere, but not a Tremere. You see, she did not get any of the curse. Many would call her Kaitif, though I think that does not do justice to the flexibility that the Unbound have. They do not have the same curse. They do not suffer what we do. But again, I've digressed. I've sidetracked myself. So they met with these Anarchs, Mal Davis. And this is where Jackie decided that she needed to get some more info on what possibly could be in the lake. And you see, she worked with Mal Davis to have somebody sent come see her. Now, Jackie did not know who it was going to be. But the one who was sent, it comes up. And while this was going on, of course, we have Destiny and Lamar. Now, Destiny and Lamar went to go see the Painted Lady. The Painted Lady, who goes by the name Edith, if you actually know her, runs a tattoo shop, and a very special tattoo shop. You see, our kind cannot get tattoos. We can be tattooed and wake up the next day and the tattoo is gone, pushed out of our skin as we sleep. But in this case, this individual does do tattoos. Though I've heard they're quite painful. Almost feels as if the sun is injected into your skin. She is an odd character. She follows, well, let's just say an odd mythos. You see, she believes in the Dark Mother. Now, over the centuries, I have seen cults come and cults go. I have seen religions come, religions go, churches come and go. But the Bahari have been there the whole time, as has the Cainites. But in this case, she is a believer that Cain betrayed Lilith. And now she seeks to return the earth to the Eden it was through pain and destruction of those, shall we say, contain the blood of Cain. Though, you would think they're both the same. But in this particular case, you see, Destiny and Lamar meeting there turned into a tense situation because the Painted Lady was not sure she would let Lamar leave. And though Lamar talks that he was getting out one way or another, let's just say the Nosferatu have ways to make sure that you leave when they're ready for you to leave if you stepped into one of their lairs. And you would think they got good information from these two visits. From the visits themselves, all Jackie got was, well, she got to know Mal Davis. I guess it's a positive. A future meeting with the Baron of the Anarchs. Destiny and Lamar, what did they get? Let's see. Destiny got invited to the cult. And in the end, Lamar, well, let's just say the interior of his car did not survive contact with a little cat named Hyde. Now, you can't blame me for forgetting to mention Hyde. You see, Hyde is Destiny's pet cat. Familius, you might call it. And that particular cat destroyed the carpeting inside of Lamar's vehicle because Lamar was a little rough with it. It seems tech isn't the only thing La Sombre have a problem with. They also seem to have a problem with a cat. I'm reminiscing now where to go next with the story. You see, well, let's go and finish what Jackie had done. You see, Jackie had gone to see Mal Davis. Now, good old Mal Davis said they would send somebody. And the original intention was for a meeting to be arranged, and the person would be there. But in this case, the one that they had information did not wait. They got a knock at the door of the steakhouse, a rather common occurrence. I've been told they constantly get visitors that they didn't expect. I find it rather amusing. And this visitor was one Sylvia Roanhorse. Now, Sylvia is quite interesting. Not only is she one of the native people of this land that was taken, she was also a kinfolk, one of the Lupine, though not a Lupine herself, shared the blood with him. Her brother was Lupine. Sylvia, it turns out, was a thin blood. Now, for those who don't understand the relationship between kindred and Lupine, it's rather tense. You see, the Lupine feel that the kindred are a scourge upon Mother Earth and are destined to destroy it. Servants of the worm, they call us. And, well, for the vampire's part, we don't exactly take it kindly that a bunch of werewolves plan to kill us. So we kill them at every opportunity. You might say there's a bit of a hostility of a war that has simmered off and on for centuries. But in this case, if I were to say that embracing a member of the kinfolk would upset a Lupine, that would be putting it very mildly. Because, well, they hate us. So the fact that this Sylvia Roanhorse shows up as somebody who is embraced, it's not a good thing. Not good at all. And Sylvia actually agreed to talk to, give them some information, give them some hints about what was found in the lake. Except it was never needed. You see, poor Miss Destiny, after Sylvia had left, felt an urge, one that she couldn't resist. An urge to go and bring the coterie to Resurrection Cemetery. Now, for those of you who study the paranormal, you will recognize Resurrection Cemetery. That is the home of Resurrection Mary, the ghost hitchhiker that you will pick up and she'll have you drop you off and then disappear. It's an old story. You'll find several variations, and those variations appear at various places in the country, which I suspect means that it's a common theme. But they were summoned out there, and what they found there, well, if I say I do not like Helen of Troy, the thing they found in the cemetery, though they got no name, calls themselves, they are the first daughter, is a being of unimaginable power. And it was here that they were explained that they are fighting their own war, and they were curious of this group, and that perhaps seeking knowledge may not end well for them, because only two know the face of this one She thinks only two know her face. The third was destroyed. But she is rather problematic for the coterie. You see, she realized that she could not erase their memory, because to do it, she would have to destroy the child of Malkav, the seer in the group. Because, well, this Malkavian Eleanor has a bit of a problem pushing the big red button. She can't resist curiosity, you see. Always the downfall of many of our time and our kind. It was at this meeting that was hinted Destiny had a secret in her blood not to be shared. Roscoe was seeking to regain his mage powers and would not get it. And it was leaving this place that Eleanor had her first vision forced on her by something else. A vision which left her with a bloody nose. A vision of a chessboard. And the white pawn being moved. Which is the opening move in a chess game, you see. To say that Jackie was upset at seeing Eleanor so distraught, is putting it mildly. But there was nothing she could do except try to harden her against mind control. A little bit of shared blood to give her the ability to resist, hopefully, what was being done to her. And you see, Destiny, having found out Wineka knew about the lake spirit more than he admitted, she went to speak to him. And he told her of the war being fought. It is a war between spirit and the lake. And as he puts it, Carthage, the bane of Carthage. But see, this doesn't explain some things that are going on with these visions that were forced on Eleanor. For you see, if you're playing a game of chess against your opponent, why would you broadcast your moves? Which raises the question, is there another person playing a game as well? We will definitely have to loop back to that. Roscoe having been told he can never regain his mage powers, and just generally curious about the situation in Chicago, reached back to speak with his sire, which is Helena Taylor, Pontifex of the Mid-Atlantic Seaboard in the D.C. Chantry. Very interesting kindred, if I might say so myself. Another former mage who lost their power. I might say it goes in the bloodline. And now we come to a turning point in everything that went on. You see, this coterie was summoned to Elysium. And the Elysium place they were summoned to was Damien's trial grounds. A trial ground that had not been used since the Lasombra joined Camarilla, where the sacrifice was made. A very ominous place to bring everyone. And it's here that you find someone had tacked a lupine's hide to the door of one of Kevin Jackson's establishments, which quite upset the man. I found it amusing. But, of course, kindred, who are targets, would say this puts them at war with the lupine. Because the hide that was tacked was Sylvia Roanhorse's brother. Brother of a kindred who was embraced from kinfolk. It was an interesting night. They took this kinfolk into custody that same night to find out who her sire was and if she had something to do with it. I'm afraid Sylvia was never found again. Well, part of her was seen again. Not the rest of her. You might say she bit off more than she could chew. It's also at this same event that we ran into a rather large problem. That problem being one Delilah. You see, Destiny had claimed she was a Toreador raised by Martin the Nosferatu. And one Toreador named Delilah was her sire. And then Delilah shows up at this Elysium event, fresh from New York. Delilah says she did not embrace Destiny. So let's sit back and muse a bit on this one. If you have someone claiming to be a Toreador when they're not, claiming to be the child of a kindred you are not, what is the punishment for this crime? What happens when you get caught? Well, for some clans, they may find it amusing. If you do that from ours, we would find it a great joke. Or we may find it an insult. Take your life in your own hands when you do that with our group. But Ventru and Toreador and, well, all the more stuffy clans find it insulting. But rather than destroy Destiny, Delilah comes up with a better plan. Delilah is going to blackmail Destiny and make her a servant. Which I think was a good idea. Well, until it wasn't. Now, this public appearance informed the coterie that Delilah was here, and while the coterie did not hear their discussion, very perceptive members of the coterie could pick up how upset Destiny was at this meeting. So Jackie and Eleanor got Destiny alone, and they had a talk. And it's here that Destiny revealed that she was not sired by Delilah. She was awful vague of who sired her. Though to read between the lines, it seems our friendly little Toreador was a caitiff. She had none of the banes. Obviously, she couldn't be an Nosferatu, because if she was an Nosferatu, she would look like her adoptive sire Martin, or the monster Winnetka, or one of the many others out there. But she took a big risk and shared this with Jackie and Eleanor. And of course, they kept her secret and helped her to protect it and to hide it, which shows a bit of bonding between the group. Though I wonder, why wouldn't Destiny tell Lamar? Why wouldn't Destiny tell Roscoe? Why? Well, we know why she wouldn't tell Jonathan. He was acting awful sus. I think that's what you kids call it these days, sus. I heard that the other night in a bar where they were playing on tablets. As you see, it's about this time, while Destiny and Eleanor and Jackie are having their talk, that Lamar finds out that his little fun in the South Side trying to take over and run the gangs ran into a bit of a roadblock by one Mr. Al Capone. Now, I know what you're thinking. Al Capone died of syphilis. No, he did not. For those in the know, well, I know what you're thinking. Al Capone died when Loden fell. No, he did not. You see, Al Capone, like many of the clan of the Scepter, are hard to kill. He's like a little fucking cockroach that crawls out every time you think you've stomped him down. And it's also shortly after this, where we find the coterie being watched. They find a symbol, an oval with a K in it. The one-eye K. It's rather interesting, this particular group of homeless, because they are well organized, excessively arrogant, aggressive. Not what you would expect from most homeless. Poking around in the coterie's business. And you see, it's funny that we bring up One-Eyed K and his gang, because Destiny had been given a mission by Wineka to keep an eye out for this gang because, well, Wineka had been losing some homeless when the One-Eyed K group got nearby. It's also about this time where Lamar finally gets contacted by one Killian Roche, Ventru, grandchildren of Al Capone. Now, I've met this Killian. Aside from his impeccable style, he's a bit of a douche. Bit of a arrogant little shit who does not deserve the amount of arrogance he's developed. You see, arrogance is a tricky subject. Some people have earned the arrogance they have. Tally has earned it. Shit heels like Killian has not. But he arranged a meeting with Lamar to meet up. And let's just say this meeting was for a 60-40 split to allow Lamar to take and run the businesses in the South Side, the gangs and the drugs for them. Though Lamar shrewdly, I have to say, he really did well in putting off giving an answer. Because that allowed him to speak with the rest of the coterie about it, in particular, Jackie. So that he could bring a better negotiator. Because while Lamar is good at some things, I don't think anyone would ever call him a mediator or negotiator. He's more of the facilitator than all of that. Now we go back to this club. Club Confession. Which, thankfully, that name was changed. It opens up. And on opening night, soft open, really. For those who don't understand, you have a real open and a soft open. Soft open is more of a test run to see how well it's going to work. And it's this night that we had a visitor, a new kindred in the city. Now, at the time, I didn't know who he was, but I've since found that out because new kindred interest me. One Ventru by the name of Philippe Carlson. A European Ventru, a friend of Jackie's. Seemed to have a reserved quantity about himself in public. Holds his emotions in check. You might say he's very distinguished. Bears himself with a certain amount of dignity. Quiet. Demeanor demanding respect. Which makes sense. Because Philippe Carlson is actually named Nolan Wilhelm. He's an archon of the Camarilla, hiding in Chicago after the fall of London. You see, he was caught in the fall of London. Now, I am not going to be the one who informs Philippe's enemies that he is here. But he has enemies and they are looking. It's also this night that Delilah shows up at the club. She, matter of fact, showed up shortly after Destiny had heard a bit of the conversation between Nolan, or Philippe, Philip and Jackie. Shortly after that discussion, Delilah had showed up. Delilah, being who she is and who she's descended from, you might call her a chip off the very old, watered-down block. Through a scene, in one night, she refused to acknowledge domain in a Camarilla city. She insulted the ones holding the domain. She threatened the owners of the domain, both Jackie and Lamar. Jackie, more of a mild threat, and more of a, do you know who I am? And Lamar in a very blatant, unsubtle, almost, you might say, as subtle as a stick to the head method. Though Lamar, to be truthful, is just as guilty. I think he said the only difference between sire and deadbeat sire is dead, and that can be fixed. Yeah. It's an interesting night that night, because this is also where Jackie met Cedric, the Dapper Nos. Everyone enjoys the Dapper Nos. He always dresses nicely. And it's also where Kathy showed a lot more interest in Lamar. Arranged a date, of all things. Now, we had a discussion in Nero. It's obvious Kathy likes to play dangerous. She is a younger kindred who still thinks the dating is what older kindred do. Take a drink. Please make sure that nobody recognizes that we may not be what we appear. Though I wish I could taste it like I used to. Odd. It's after this is the night where Jackie arranged her meeting with Cedric. It's also the opening night where there was an arson across the street. A message from One-Eyed K, you see. A message to acknowledge him. And that he knows. Now, you see, Lamar, being ex-Sabbat, his way of dealing with problems is not, let's say, the Camarilla way. Though, as I said before, they're all the same, and they just slightly change the angle. You see, Sabbat deal with problems in many ways like the Camarilla. Don't let them lie to you. The Camarilla just hides it under pleasant words, behind curtains of civility. But that's not the truth. They are not like that. And it's after this meeting with Delilah, where she threatened Lamar, where you first see Jackie and Lamar have a bit of a heart-to-heart, a forging of a friendship. Though, rather than friendship, I think a better word is a forging of battle buddies. You see, they've decided that they are the ones who are going to make sure that everyone is safe. And veterans of a different style of warfare working together can accomplish a lot more than any one of them. And it's at this particular meeting that Lamar admitted that the night Destiny was to be embraced by Delilah, and the reason Delilah could not embrace her was because Lamar had arranged a hit to have Delilah removed. Now, he didn't know Destiny at the time. He didn't even know who Delilah was, though he suspected. But the key information from all this, the part that's the problem, was the one who snitched out Delilah to the Sabbat hitman for him to arrange an execution was a Nosferatu. A Camarilla Nosferatu. Which leads to the question, what Nosferatu might have a vested interest? in ensuring that Destiny was not embraced by Delilah. It's also here where Lamar gets to finally meet with Killian after a night of, well, an interesting night in many ways. They had their talk, and Jackie went to negotiate with Killian and actually managed to get a better deal. I believe 55-45 split. Gross, not net. Not that it matters. You see, this was the night when they met that they found out that one Gino Manatelli was in town. You see, and there's the problem. Because Gino Manatelli is blood hunted. It was left as a message. But it doesn't end well. We'll be coming back to that. Because I need to go into some issues we had. You see, Eleanor has been having these forced visions, which I'm quite aware that Eleanor's sire is not happy about. They do not appreciate anyone messing with their child. But one of her few non-coterie friends is one Ben Galura. Now, I've met Ben. He's a seer. He's a thin blood and a seer. He was a seer before he became one of us. And he's blessed in some ways to still be able to walk in the light. But you see, when Eleanor went to meet him, she gave him a jade amulet. Or he gave her a jade amulet. Yes. Did she give it to him? Different time. He gave her the jade amulet, you see. And she kept it with her and noticed that it would grow warm or cold depending on what's coming. It's also here where you finally saw a side of Eleanor you probably haven't seen before. You see, she went to one of the mental group homes. Hospital, really. Met with a friend of hers, Sonia. Sonia had let her know that she was being harassed by a man named Ralph. And it's here that you saw Eleanor give a simple command: leave the girls alone. Now, when one of our kind give you a command, you take it very literally. You have to worry just how that's going to end up. And now we have to talk about a rather major event. It's rather big. You see, Jackie met with Cedric, got information on Delilah, and then she put two and two together with what Lamar had said, came to realize that Delilah was a serious threat, not only to Destiny, but to Martin and the coterie as a whole. You see, you do not want to risk other people finding out that you knew someone was impersonating a Toreador. Because if they find out, they may hold you responsible as well. So, Jackie met with Cedric, and then her and Lamar took a trip to Tent City, to one Winnetka. In Winnetka, the snitch was convinced, because clan before sect, that Delilah was a threat to Clan Nosferatu. And Delilah needed to have something done. Now, the funny point of this whole meeting is Jackie And Lamar learned something else about Winnetka. He's not just got his homeless in Tent City. He has an army. His homeless are organized in squads, in units. They appear homeless, but they are not. He has built him his own private force right there waiting. Jackie set forth in motion to have Delilah removed, to have her gone. We shall see how that ends up. And it's at this point we have to get back to our good friend Jonathan de Tremere. You see, the coterie knew what Portia was. They knew who Portia was. And they'd made an agreement. Do not be caught alone with her. Do not visit her club anymore unless you have to. Do not poke the one who launched 1,000 ships. And yet, he went there to her club on a Sunday alone. And he saw Miss Portia, along with Primogene Annabelle. And he saw them dancing on a night where there wasn't many there. And though he did not interrupt their dance, it was obvious, especially to the dancers, that he contemplated it. And just contemplating it was a bold move, especially as one of the dancers was a Primogen. And Jonathan was nothing in the city. He's in Scilly. But to tell you, the funny thing about Chicago is in Scilly might as well be neonates in most cities. Most of Chicago is in Scilly or more. You might say they have a top-heavy structure around there. So he went to the Succubus Club alone. And unfortunately, he set in path of his own destruction. We will come to that as we go forward. We now get to the end result of this visit with Jackie and Winnetka. The visit that they'd made to Winnetka with Lamar. You see, Winnetka does not play. He's very serious about protecting his clan. Clan before sect. And it was only days after this meeting that Destiny found out that her sire was going to meet an end. You see, Delilah was snatched as soon as Destiny was no longer in her presence. Delilah's people were taken from the street in front of Lamar, who recognized the driver, Bobby, one of Winnetka's people. And then this is where Destiny and Jackie and Lamar had a heart-to-heart, where Jackie explained to Destiny what she had done, that Delilah was a threat that Destiny could not handle on her own and would not handle on her own because it's too dangerous, but one that Jackie would not allow to threaten her coterie, threaten those in her coterie, or threaten her like Delilah had done. She admitted to Destiny that she had Delilah removed by Winnetka. It's also where, because Destiny had admitted Delilah was not her sire to Lamar, where Lamar finally came clean. He admitted his part. He admitted that he had been the one who killed, well, attempted to kill Delilah to prevent her embrace. It's also here, at this time, though Eleanor knew it not, she had another vision of a white knight taking a black pawn. And this is important because this particular vision came at the same exact time that Delilah was being taken. for her destruction. So if a white knight removes a black pawn at the same time as a kindred is being killed, and Winnetka does it, does that make Winnetka the white knight? Was Delilah the black pawn? And if she is a black pawn, well, later information would prove out that Delilah was a descendant of Helena. As a descendant of the one who calls herself Portia now. So that would definitely mark her as a pawn, which leads you to believe the black player is Portia. And of course, that would leave you to question the white player. And the white player would definitely be someone on Winnetka's side. Though, is it the lake? Is it that ancient being that they met in the cemetery? Is it both? Is there any difference between the two? It's an interesting thought, isn't it? It's one I can't even answer. I avoid the thing in the lake as much as I can. It's also here that this coterie finally met with One-Eyed K. And he is a madman, horribly burnt and injured, damaged. Werewolf claw marks on him still. Insane. Not in a way that those who are descendants of Malkav are, but in a paranoid delusion of his fall. Because fall he has. Jackie figured it out based on the ones he was calling for. Kevin, Alan, Horatio. He's all calling on childer and broodmates. Or other attachments to him. And One-Eyed K is Loden. Once Prince of Chicago that fell. Once Mighty Ventru, who's fallen as far as being burned and mangled. And what's funny about this whole thing is that he's refused to heal the wounds. He's left them. Is it a reminder of what he lost? Or is he just too far gone to know? But I will say it comes back to what I talk about with the Clan of the Scepter. They're little cockroaches. You can stomp on them and try to kill them, but they scuttle back out. In this case, they burned him, clawed him with lupines, and he still manages to claw his way out. And the lunatic thinks he's king. He thinks he still rules a city, when really, none of us rule a city. We are incapable of rule. We just tell ourselves we rule things. But we could have a whole discussion on the frailties of what I feel is the condition of those around me. And poor Destiny. She goes to see Winnetka, and he tells her he killed Delilah because he knew that she is not Delilah's kid. You see, Winnetka knew who her sire really was. Winnetka knows Destiny is the child of Martin. And though she did not get the Nosferatu curse, he considers her Nosferatu. And he sees her as a chance for a Nosferatu who can not be trapped as they are. You see, though many clans deny it, the Nosferatu are forced to the fringes of society. They must hide as a homeless in the sewers, in the cast-off regions, catacombs. Because they can't walk freely, short of using the power of their blood among the kind, among their food. Whereas in Winnetka's view, she is Nosferatu to her core. But she can accomplish what none of them else can. She can achieve status as a high clan she can make her own way, but still, as a Nosferatu, be what she's meant to be. It's also here that Winnecker fully gave the impression that he knows about the lake spirit and works with it. And now we come to a rather interesting night. You see, once again, we have a night where Abigail shows up at the club. As I said before, it seems Abigail spends a lot of time with the coterie at the club, though, again, Eleanor was not there. Abigail has yet to meet Eleanor. And it is at this club meeting where Lamar has his date with Kathy. Now, I will not admit to being there or not being at the club that night, but I will say I have never seen such a masterful execution of cock blocking in all my centuries as a kindred. Watching Jackie and then Destiny come in on a 1-2 and thoroughly spoil all plans Kathy had was amazing. And I will say it's a rare occurrence to see kindred work that well together. Poor Kathy. Lonely Kathy. Not really happy. I'm afraid the poor girl was out of practice. Her method of trying to seduce Lamar was, shall we say, overly aggressive. You see, though Lamar is a Sabbat, he's not a fan of the Toria horrors. And then we had a problem with Nero showing up. And this is where I believe Jackie and Nero had a bit of a talk. And Jackie has found that Nero is beyond any of the niceties of humanity. For one such as me who looks at him, I see an empty vessel where a kindred should be. But it's an empty vessel with something else in it. Nero has been filled with something. And it is not Nero. Because his beast is gone. It's silent. For those who know our condition, understand. We are our beast. We hide it. But we are. And to see one without it, no wonder his muse is gone. Without the anger, without the passion, without the violence. There is no muse. You do not create art with none of that. And this is what I see. And this is also what Jackie saw that night. And as Jackie being someone who once was courted to become a Toreador, though she chose differently, I'm sure she understands how sad it is for one such as Nero to have lost what he was. But you also find that Nero does not look at Kathy like Kathy would want to be looked at. But I'm sure he will not be possessive, correct? I'm sure the beast won't reassert itself at some point. And now we go on to, well, we've got to touch back on Eleanor again. You see, Eleanor went to see her friend Ben. We've talked about this jade amulet. She went to see Ben, and Ben told her he had not seen her. She was not there the previous week. Now, I know Eleanor remembered him. She was there. She remembered him. She remembered getting the amulet. But he was adamant she was not there. But that night he had had a strange dream of the hedgerows. Now, I don't delve into the hedgerows much, as any smart kindred avoids. But that is not a location that you want to play around with. It is not the whimsy and the fairy tale version. Needless to say, she went to look at his tarot cards and got a shock. You see, when she looked at their tarot cards, all of the cards in the deck had been replaced with the Tower. Now, I don't know how much you know about tarot cards, but the Tower is not a good thing. The Tower is destruction. Dynasty ending calamity. Complete upheaval of all that was. And this is what she found. Now, you could also argue, but the Camarilla calls itself a tower. Why, yes. Meanings within meanings. Could this be the destruction of the tower? Could it be the destruction of the tower's hold in Chicago? Could it be the destruction of Eleanor with the tower? Who knows? But you see, she took back these cards to her coterie and found out the cards were not what they appeared. They were a cheap set of tarot cards. And the glamour that had been on him was gone. And what nobody noticed that night is Jonathan took the cards to destroy them. But he pocketed them. You see, they went from there because of the amulet, which oddly enough seemed to suggest it came from, or at least had touched, the power of oblivion, the place, the La Sombra Walk, where the dead live. They decided to secure it in Mercury, in Roscoe's shop. It's at this shop that Eleanor had yet another vision. And this was a vision of the future as opposed to what had been happening. And it was a vision of the Black Knight taking a white pawn. So you see, we had the White Knight take a black pawn, and now we have the Black Knight take the white pawn. And it's on this same night that Jonathan went to see Abraham, his regent, with his deck of tarot cards. And it's also the night that the check came due for the bill that he had acquired that night at the Succubus Club. You see, Abraham knows who Portia is. And Abraham knows better than to lose that source of information. So when Portia decided she wanted to pick his brain of something that she knew little about, house score tricks, infernalism, he gave her Jonathan. Jonathan was lost that night to the clutches, though what was Jonathan was lost that night. He survived a few more nights, but he wasn't what he was prior. And it's after this, when Jonathan turns missing, that Roscoe gets called to see his regent. And you see, Roscoe had a small problem. You see, he had a book, as we talked about, made of flesh, that the Setites were interested in. You see, because if it comes from a Setite temple, they feel it's theirs. So this book, in a wild idea of given another city would have been a good idea, honestly, was to put it in the Tremere library, because the Tremere aren't known to give up anything out of their libraries. But the book was taken by Portia because she, though she refused at first to touch it, found it interesting. And it's here that when Roscoe, who had pretty much written his book off, met with Abraham, Abraham told him that Jonathan was sent on a chantry mission to do something for the chantry. And then he was threatened that he should toe the line, show loyalty to the chantry, and follow the lie that was being told. Or else he may get tasked to do chantry business. And you see, Abraham is not a fool. He understands negotiations. You must use a carrot and a stick. He showed them the stick. He waved it in front of Roscoe, but he needed his carrot, and his carrot was the return of the book. Though, it's odd, he gets this book back. He never counted how many pages it had when he gave it into the library, and he's never counted how many pages are in it when he got it back. It's also a few nights later where the coterie once again split to do multiple tasks. You see, Jackie wants nothing to do with the spooky things that are going on. So Jackie and Destiny go to visit Luke's art gallery, while Roscoe, Eleanor, and Lamar go to meet Ben. Now, let's see, which one shall I cover first? Let's go with the Ben one first. Turns out to have been an interesting evening meeting with Ben. You see, they met with more than Ben. They met with Ben and an emissary. That's what he called himself. Who was quite angry that Eleanor was poking into things she shouldn't poke about. Because they want them to observe the board and not be players on the board. But by poking around and asking too many questions, you become a piece on the board that can be eliminated. It's also here that Roscoe, I will say Roscoe and Eleanor shows a bit of the friendship that was building, because Roscoe did do his best to console her after what had happened. And good old Lamar, who instigated the emissary's visit by wanting a reading, has still not got his reading. Well, he will get a reading at some point, I am sure. Now, let's talk about the Luke incident. For a ministry, he can be awful emotional. You see, when Destiny and Jackie shows up at Luke's gallery, Luke was meeting with Reese. Now, Reese is a shorter woman that actually performs in Jackie's cabaret. She is an employee of Jackie. And Luke, assuming, as he does, and you know what they say about assuming, makes an ass out of you and me. Because in his case, he assumed that meant that if Reese works for Jackie, she's feeding on her and doing what most kindred do. And though he was wrong in his assumption, it caused him to make a fatal mistake in some ways, though the fatality may not have caught up to him. You see, he threatened Jackie. And what is it Jackie said when, what happens when Jackie gets angry? Oh, yes. Ask Delilah. Oh, wait, you can't. So Luke threatening Jackie did not go well. Though Jackie did agree not to harm Reese. But Jackie does not forget. Jackie does not forgive a slight when she was there to be social. And the fact that Luke tried to arrange a date with Destiny, who he feels is young and can be influenced, did not go over well either with Jackie. It's also, this is the night that Destiny sent a text with a word that should not be in it. It's also the night that Destiny went and met with a prostitute named Sandy. Sandy reminded her of an old friend. Friend she thought lost. Now, let's go into how Jackie deals with the Luke problem. You see, they needed to break anyway, so Jackie found a nice neutral place to meet with him. And whole coterie gathering at Red Number 5. Now, for those who have not been to Red Number 5, it is an amazing place if you're a tourist. But I will say that Mr. Stedman does run a nice, tight ship. And it's here at Red Number 5 that Jackie had her meeting with Luke and put him in his place and explained to him she's not afraid of his big dog girlfriend and not worried about what he can accomplish, and that he better watch it because she can destroy that what was important to him. He's not happy. He's used to being in the power position in these discussions. It did not go well for him. I'm sure that they'll be able to patch up their differences though, right? A headstrong Ventru and a slimy Setite. Maybe they won't. It's also the night we had a rather interesting little confrontation. Seems Genghis was there. It has always had an eye for destiny. And, well, this time, Lamar decided to get involved. And now, while I understand Lamar's frustration, you do not challenge a Bruja to throw down, especially one like Genghis. Genghis has accepted his offer and has says, anytime Lamar feels froggy, he should pop down to Anarchville. Though I think if Lamar takes too long to visit, Genghis might come looking for him. We also have Lamar meeting with Kathy that night. Lamar was a busy man, wasn't he? He met with Kathy again that night, and you see, Kathy dialed it back a bit, and I think she had a better impact on Lamar with that. I think that she catches more flies with that flavor of honey, you might say. Come off a little vulnerable, a little sad. Seemed to have worked, though, because at least he would speak to her and agree to possibly meet publicly, of course, somewhere else. And then we come to a very odd meeting where Kevin Jackson pulled the coterie into the back room. And I will say, Jackie, being the venture she is, she made sure to lead the discussion and to observe all proper conduct. Though a few members of her coterie had to be chastised for not answering a question when the prince asked. You see, Kevin Jackson, though he is a newer prince, he does believe in respect being given his position. When he asks you a question, you should answer it. It's also the same night that Eleanor ran into Son. Son. Jason Newberry. I'm ashamed to say he's one of our blood. One of the descendants of Malkav. He doesn't understand how to subtly wield his abilities. Let's just say, messing with Eleanor upsets forces beyond his control. There's forces both in the coterie and outside of that coterie. It's also a night that Damien was informed by Lamar of Killian. And, well, not of Killian, but of Gino being in town. You see, for the blood hunt must be upheld. Now we go to a final night to end all nights. You see, Jackie was approached by Melina. Melina actually asked her to help her get one Olivia out of town. Now, this Olivia, based on information that Abigail, Jackie's daughter, childer, should say, has given her, is the sire of Sylvia Roanhorse. Though I get the impression Milena did not know that it was the sire. And Milena wants Olivia smuggled out of town. So Jackie goes to meet with the wolf pack, Tyrus. Because if you want someone to get past the goblin roads, there's two ways to do it. You can go through and use the wolf pack or the psychopomps. Now, she doesn't know the psychopomps. So that leaves only the wolf pack. Because if you want to sneak someone out of Chicago, the last thing you use is going to be a plane or a train or a boat. So Jackie goes and meets with Tyrus. And it's there that, well, she was a bit ballsy. She egged on and otherwise goaded a gangrel, an old gangrel, to raise his ire up, to show she wasn't afraid of the big dog. She wasn't afraid of the pack leader. She wasn't afraid to challenge the alpha in his turf, though not a challenge in a way that demanded he responded, but a challenge to show that she will not be weak-willed and will not be pushed around. And it's here that in exchange for him not gathering the information on missing neonates like he was supposed to, that he's going to smuggle Olivia out of the city. And I will say that that particular meeting could have gone very poorly. But Jackie made the right choice. For one, such as Tyrus, all he respects is strength. All he respects is aggression. And by showing it, she earned the respect that she needed from him. This is also the night that Lamar finds out Gino was sighted in the South Side. And Lamar sets up, as he does, of arranging to have Gino removed. Because, as Tally puts it, what better way to prove your loyalty than to sacrifice one that has to go? So, Lamar follows Gino, calls in Damien and Alexa, and you find out something very interesting. You find out Damien is sheriff for a reason. He is a fighter. You find out Alexa has a touch of the La Sombra powers. She has sampled somehow Oblivion because she used powers that a Malkavian should not have. And if you want to see a rather disturbing team, you combine the passion and emotion of a Bruja, partner him with a homicidal, sociopathic monster who's learned to wield the power of death. And it's hard to find a better group. It's also the night that Destiny killed Sandy's pimp. Stuck a knife right in his kidney. It's actually rather impressive. Shanked him good, you might say. But it's after that that she had her meeting with Martin and found out where Martin admitted that he is the reason she was not Toreador. He blocked Delilah from embracing her. He set up the hit that Lamar did. But he did it out of love. A love for a daughter he lost. Love for a child lost in World War II to the Germans. And because of a cat that they had shared long ago. So it's odd. Because I don't understand the attachment. I guess he was young. Though would not have been young with the he embraced. You must lose the attachments to what you were to achieve what you need to be. Martin's an attachment to one Nadja. Now destiny is a weakness, one that may burn him in the end as he has burned others. And we come to Roscoe. Roscoe. You see, the pending Lupine War, the loss of Jonathan, all the other stresses took a toll on Roscoe. He called in a life boon, if you believe it. A life boon from one Samuel Grant, who came to the city. And Samuel Grant, being Bruja, but a good little boy, reported to the prince to announce his presence. And it's at this meeting where he presented himself that Kevin Jackson wished to see Roscoe and the rest of the coterie to discuss this newcomer, this Bruja, this from the clan of those who killed Hardestat in a city run by Ventru. Though I will say the fact that Damien is a Bruja shows that Kevin at least can put aside clan hatreds. It's at this meeting with the Prince and Primogen that Kevin Jackson found out what to do with Samuel. You see, Samuel is an unknown, but Roscoe, because of the name of his sire, does hold a little weight. He's at least listened to at times. And when Roscoe stands up and says he will stand for Samuel, and he will attest that Sam will do what he's supposed to, and that Sam will toe the line, and he will follow the rules. Kevin Jackson listened, but just enough to tell Roscoe that for 2 years, Sam is the responsibility of Roscoe. Sam's crimes will be brought on Roscoe. Breaking the masquerade, violating the traditions, stubbing your toe. All that goes back on Roscoe. But Roscoe feels it's worth it because he knows Sam. He's fought with Sam. Speaking of fighting, it's rather interesting actually because Lamar recognizes Sam and Sam recognizes Lamar. Those two have fought before during the Sabbat Wars in D.C. after the fall of the one I will not mention. That thing will not be said by my lips. But they know each other. And it's at the same meeting that Sun once again tries to use his powers on the daughter of Malkath. And that's the second time. 3 strikes, you're out. It's on the way back from that meeting that we found that Sam wasn't sure what he was getting into. A war with the Lupine. Stay away from the lake. Stay away from the Succubus Club. Don't go to Resurrection Cemetery. Though nobody told Sam about Destiny's mess up with the text for the Second Inquisition, who, I will say, raided the steakhouse the next day, though all evidence of kindred activity had long been removed. Which is good. It's very good. Now we come to the final thing to get you caught up. You see, when Eleanor has been distressed over the actions of Sun and the forced visions, and our line is strong in certain abilities, we feel the web, we know what our children are doing. And in the case of Eleanor, her sire has returned. One Dolly, an individual beyond caring about the right, the wrong, the games, the effort. You see, I know Dolly. intimately. Because I am the one who made them. Sun should not have done what Sun done. And though I do not have the ability to sear the future, nor does Dolly, which is why Eleanor was chosen, I do know it's not going to end well. And the problem is, in kindred society, when you have a force that does not play by any of the other rules, what danger does that bring to those that do? I chilled her. It's not going to be gentle. And I will not stop them. Because that would influence the game. That would influence what I'm watching. So, I think I've rambled on a while here. Have you got any questions that you would like me to tell you about before I send you on your way? You don't get a chance often to ask me questions, so feel free. You're at the table with me, ask questions. The bartender. Let me look here. He does look like a tasty mortal. But I don't think I'll eat that bartender. I think I will let him stay. You see, eating her bartender would influence some events that I just like to watch and observe. That's the point of who I am, watching and observing. So I try not to directly get involved. It's the same reason I won't do anything to help Sun. No. So you like the new ponytail, I see. Ask questions of the ponytail. Well, you know, I have to change my look for each new mask. I don't think you understand how difficult it is to interact with you, how hard it is to talk with those whose heart I can hear, whose blood I can smell. I have to put controls on myself, otherwise I revert. So, you're curious about what I feel about this Sam individual. You see, I've met this Sam before. I've seen him. You might say I peek into the web quite a bit. The coterie has high hopes for him. He brings something they needed, some muscle. And he's going to need the muscle. Because I've heard word that the Lupine are going to step up their activities. They're finally getting their reinforcements in place. Wonder, you ask, is Eleanor's sire a significant threat to her? Is Eleanor's sire on the board? Eleanor's sire would answer that as they are the board. They do not play the game. But when a hurricane comes through, does it deliberately put you in danger? Or are you in danger because you happen to be in its path? Are you in danger by the nature of it being there? You see, Dolly is not like me. Dolly is not like her. We all adapt differently. And in Dolly's case, Dolly is. Dolly will do the fastest, most direct way to protect the one Dolly feels should be protected. And damn the consequences. Oh, someone asks about whether a woodchuck chuck wood. I do not know. I do not like wood. You might say I avoid anything pointy and wooden. You wonder about secrets that could be revealed in the near future. Well, I think I've given a few secrets here. I will say I do not see the future. All I can see is the present. But one thing I am good at is analyzing the present and understanding events that may have been set in motion, things that may happen. And I will say, a fall is coming for someone in this city. It is going to be a big fall. And that's all I'm going to give up from that one. Will there be any primogen not seen on camera yet in the new season? Well, will there be new primogen in the city? That is a hard one to answer. You see, it would have to have a primogen gone. We've seen all of the primogen. Though, you haven't talked with them. It was only brief with the Sam mission. I've seen them all when they went to that gathering at the Primogen Council. The Primogen I tend to avoid because, honestly, they spend a lot of time blathering and chattering. Don't ever seem to make any real decisions or do anything. You wonder about Clan Tremere's numbers. Well, they took a loss of 1. But I think there's more Tremere in the city than you realize. I think there's more than admitted. Like many things in Chicago, it's a big city. There's many more kindred than you've seen so far. And there'll be many more to come. You can rest assured there's more Tremere out there than one who would hate that clan would be comfortable with. The usurpers are everywhere. But much like the Ventru, they're little cockroaches as well. Too hard to step, too hard to eliminate, too hard to remove. What? You see, I knew someone would ask about Chicago, or Chinatown. You ask about going into Chinatown. What part is safe? What part is not? Do you like your flesh intact? Do you like keeping the blood that you drink inside you? If so, avoid Chinatown. Because the last one who went and did things they were not supposed to in Chinatown had to be destroyed when every drop of blood they drank shot out their skin. Well, where their skin should have been, because they had been skinned, and no amount of healing would return it. No amount of healing would allow them to keep the blood in them. I would avoid that. Even I don't step into Chinatown. I respect the boundaries. I know who owns it. I will stay out, as should you. But I am just one person. You can feel free to ignore that. Any other interesting questions before I send you on your way? Resurrection Cemetery. You see, they may return there if the one who runs it decides to call them over. You see, that's the thing. The one who runs it, or the one who called them before, it's awful hard to resist. But I think that one got the info they wanted at a destiny. If someone else were to be summoned, they would be looking for a different answer, which leaves you to ponder, who would they summon next? Would it be Jackie for moving the Winnetka piece on the board and eliminating a black pawn? Would it be Eleanor for her visions? Would it be Roscoe for his book? Would it be Lamar for his definite connection to the dead? Who would the one who lives in Resurrection Cemetery want to speak to next? I can't answer that, because I avoid that one as well, for she is far older than I am. And with age, you do have to give a proper amount of leeway. So, I think this would be a good point for you to leave. Because, well, I've got other people to see. And you'll be back next week. Matter of fact, I think you'll come back 5 p.m. next week. We will talk briefly about the goings-on of the Kindred and see what they're up to next week. Because I've been told events are going to pick up at 5 p.m. Eastern. Right here. Next Sunday. And if you like speaking with me, take a look. Got a list of friends over here, people we like, people that put on good shows. They like to just tell the stories as I do. If you want to speak with your boy Twitch or any of the Coterie members, or just join a group of knowledge seekers that like stories, pop over to the Discord. If you want to see past messages, I talked tonight about the story and gave you a summary. But if you want to go into all the details, all you have to do is go and catch me on the other format. Catch me on YouTube. You will find all of our stories right there on YouTube. The details, everything that led up to where we're at. And of course, obviously, Season 3 of Windy City After Dark will start at 5 p.m. Eastern next Sunday. It's been a long ride. It's been a good break. We're ready to return. The cast is roaring, ready to go. The cast is ready to do it. I think Jackie is just twitching. And we're ready to do this. It's going to be fun. And as always, the schedule this week. Next Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Call of Cthulhu. We're getting the cock in. Get some cock with Tiss. Amazing show. And then Sunday, Windy City Season 3, Episode 1 premieres. So please try to tune into that. We'll hope to see you now that you've caught up. You can join us on that. And of course, everyone, mental health, it's no joke. It's no laughing matter. Even your boy Twitch takes mental health very seriously. Please check in on family, check in on loved one, check in on those around you, check in on the people you haven't heard from for a while. Make sure they're okay, please, because it's a hard time for all of us, and not everyone is okay. And maybe by checking in, you help them a little bit, or bring a little sunshine to their day or something. Please check in on them. And if you are someone who suffers from mental health, please look over here in chat. There's a whole list of numbers that you can call. There's texts you can do to reach out to a professional. They'll do it free of charge, 24 hours a day. They don't judge you. They don't hold it against you. They just talk to you and try to help you. And if you don't want to talk to that, reach out to your friends, reach out to loved ones, reach out to those around you, and reach out to them, because we can't carry all this alone, and we shouldn't have to, because all me and character aside, even vampire shows that when you're alone, you're weak. It's the groups. It's the ties between each other that make us strong. It is the ties with the ones around you, your friends, the ones who mean something to you, even the ones you don't like. It's those ties between them that make us who we are and make us stronger people as a whole. So please, if you need to talk with somebody, talk with them. And I do thank you all, and I will see you next week. And this has been your boy Twitch, and we'll be talking. Good night, everybody.